FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It is September 6th, 2017. We are battening down the hatches, waiting for Hurricane Irma to wreak its retribution upon the evils of humanity, if you believe in such things. I just think it's a big storm. But we don't know if it's really going to hit Florida or not yet. But the pictures of hitting Bermuda and St. Kitts and St. Bart's are just incredible. You can't even believe it. But the financial tsunami that is about to strike will be one for the record books. It will be a Category 10 tsunami. I don't know if they measure tsunamis that way, but it'll certainly be a Category 10 hurricane. In the financial sector, it's happening right now as we speak. Bix Weir, you are with us now. Make sure you check out Bix's site, Road to Ruta, ROTA.com. And Bix, welcome back.
Hey, Kerry, it's nice to be here in these times of turbulence.
Turbulence, both weather-wise. You look at the devastation in Houston, 4th largest city in the country. You look at what happened to those islands. It looks like it's going to swing by. The eye will be north of Puerto Rico, but it's going to hit Cuba. And if you've been to Cuba, without hurricanes, during the rainy season, 2 to 3 buildings in Old Havana fall down, collapse of their own weight because of lack of maintenance, because communists don't believe in maintenance because there's no market. But speaking of markets, we had some big news out of the Dallas Fed today, didn't we?
Yes, Stanley Fischer, the guy who runs the Fed. He's the number 2 guy at the Fed. He's the ex-central banker of the Israeli central bank that Obama put in to run the system and put Janet Yellen there as kind of a spokesmodel. Stanley Fischer has resigned as of Friday the 13th, Friday, October 13th. This has surprised everybody who thought that, the big bad Fed controls us and there's no good guys behind the scenes. But I absolutely think this is a sign that the good guys are taking out the bad guys. And it's a great thing for humanity, a great thing for the United States. But we're going to have to go through some serious turmoil over the next few months as we transition out of the old system and into something new.
Hey, and something is definitely happening, Bix. I mean, we talked pre-call about the Chinese oil contract. I am inclined to agree with you. It's just a distraction. It's not going to work. But for all these years, you and I have been talking, the price of gold has been moribund and silver. All of a sudden, it starts picking up. And now the experts will say, oh, it's North Korea saber rattling. But the reality is something totally different, isn't it?
Yeah, the reality is the price of gold and silver have been controlled via computer programs since the late 60s, early 70s, when the first computer programs were implemented by Alan Greenspan. That's the reason Alan Greenspan was put as the head of the Fed in 1987. And now our current Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, was the head of IT for Goldman Sachs. He was the head of all the computer market rigging for Goldman Sachs. That's how he ended up as head of the Fed. And I think it is a time of change. He was the first Treasury Secretary in 70 years to go out to Fort Knox. And the question is why?
Yeah, why did he do that? Yeah, I'm really happy that you raised that because it slipped my mind. But there's something very suspicious about that, wasn't there?
I think we're inching towards the transition out of the old system into a gold-backed system, a crypto-backed system. There's all kinds of talk of gold right now, with Germany getting their gold back finally. With even in the Philippines, they're talking about Marcos's gold. The Yamashita's gold that Marcos and his wife Imelda had under their control, and supposedly they had hidden it around at I think it was like 30 or 40 different banks around the world for safekeeping, and all that gold. I mean, that's 300,000 tons of gold, which is way more than anybody had thought was available. But if you read Gold Warriors, the book by Peggy and Sterling Seagrave, you'll see that, oh my God, that's real stuff. That stuff is actually, this has been a drama going on since they found the gold in right after World War II. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the gold world and a lot to come out about secret hidden stashes of gold because it's so important now. We need to know how much gold is out there so we can properly value it for the new monetary system.
And that is a great question to which there is no comprehensive answer, is there?
Well, I think there are teams within the U.S. Treasury who have been working on that specific issue for decades. I mean, literally decades. If you look at the Road to Ruta comics and the stuff that the Fed Boston put out, it's all about returning to a gold standard. And the little pamphlet called Banking Basics that the Fed Boston put out shows people walking into banks with stacks of gold coins to trade for U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
The big question is going to be, obviously, if gold is involved, then the unbacked fiat system will be gone. The first country to say, oh, by the way, we're using gold as money instead of unbacked fiat, everybody and their mother will be attracted to that currency. But it's got to be redeemable because once they destroy the old system, nobody's going to trust these guys anymore. Yeah. So they can't invent an SDR. They can't invent some blockchain crypto thing. No one will trust them. They'll be the ones that will be kicked out and thrown in jail. So a new system's got to be a pure trust system, and the blockchain can help with that. But gold is the ultimate, and it will be a redeemable system where, yes, you can use a credit card, you can use paper dollars, but they're redeemable in gold, meaning you can go into any bank you want, take your bills and say, I want the physical gold that is supposed to be backing these bills, and they're going to be giving it to people.
Yeah. I am inclined to agree because otherwise, all these cryptocurrencies that are out there, so many of them are fraudulent. I mean, look, I don't have a lot of confidence in the Chinese communist regime, but they said that 90% of the ICOs were fraudulent offerings, and that would make sense.
It does, but it doesn't take away from the legitimate cryptocurrencies that will literally save our asses, because you can't just go to a gold standard. It wouldn't work. No. We don't have the gold, supposedly, and millions of people will die if the system just crashes, and there's nothing we can do about it. With the buildup of the crypto economy right next to our current economy, it's a transition, and it's an amazing transition, amazing invention. Yes, there's a lot of fraud in the cryptocurrencies, but the reality is that's our future. It is not going back to a silver coin standard. It's not necessarily going back to a gold standard either. I think gold will be useful, but not the most useful.
I think it'll be good as a store of value. Once it's no longer manipulated, it will really tell you what the currencies are worth because it'll trade freely.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Gold will be used as a store of value, but we got 7 billion people on planet Earth that need a means of exchange.
Right. You got to have a medium of exchange.
Yep.
That's what's lacking right now in the cryptos, but
I don't think so at all. I think it's exactly the opposite.
You can't go to 7-Eleven and buy a beer with a Bitcoin.
You can when the banks collapse, there'll be nothing else. You got to remember, the derivative bubble is going to take down every single bank on planet Earth. So there won't be anybody going to 7-Eleven with their debit card if it's attached to a bank.
Oh, no. So, I'm just saying for right now, it hasn't made that final step.
Oh, right.
In the evolution.
The cryptocurrency have not been accepted by mainstream because they have not been needed by the majority of humanity.
Right.
The very second that the banks crash again, like they did in 2008, and there's no bailout this time, that is the very second that everybody with a cell phone will start turning to the cryptocurrencies as a means of exchange. So you will be able to go into your 7-Eleven and exchange some Litecoin or some Bitcoin or some Monero for a Slurpee. And because the teller will have a cell phone as well. And that's the amazing thing about the cryptos is that the infrastructure is there. All you need is electronics. You need a computer or a smartphone or a tablet, and you can transact business in the cryptos. With gold, it would take years to distribute gold and all that stuff. With the cryptos, it is there, it is ready. Anybody who has a cell phone can instantly download a wallet, and the question is, how do we get cryptos to everybody? I think Satoshi's 1 million Bitcoin that he's hiding is part of the U.S. government's plan to reintroduce money into the U.S. after the banks crash.
Yeah.
And everybody would end up with, they'll open their wallet and say, hit this download, and you download it, and all of a sudden you have a crypto wallet on your phone with loaded with some Bitcoin, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, well, it's definitely there. Let's just hope we don't have an EMP that wipes out all of the computers in the world. But I think it's a little far-fetched.
That's the funniest. The EMP thing is the funniest because gold and silver would be useless with an EMP world. In an EMP world, the majority, probably all of humanity would die instantly because there'd be no food, no water, no gas, no electronics, no information, no nothing.
Yeah.
So, and the science behind the EMP, I heard it's like you need 500 nuclear bombs to go off at the exact right time, at the exact right altitude to take it out. So
it's hard to direct that EMP wave. So I don't think it's really practical, but
gold and silver would be useless in that world too.
What would be useful is guns, because that's the only thing you would have. And trade
your car won't work because all the electronics are fried.
Yeah, nothing will work. I mean, it's kind of silly, and
it is a doomsday scenario. So when people throw out an EMP and say, "Oh, an EMP can take down Bitcoin," well, that's not a reason not to invest in Bitcoin, because an EMP you'll be dead anyway. So what does it matter?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I don't think it's that realistic. And certainly it would only be a rogue nation that would attempt it. Like China, Russia are not going to attempt an EMP attack. It's absurd.
Well, that's the other thing. If it's a one-off, it's possible. You take out a city or something like that. Something like that is possible.
That's like a hurricane hits Houston or a quake hits LA. For a couple of days, whatever, couple of weeks, months, it's going to be chaotic. But the whole country brought down on it, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, the country would be dead. The country would die, and then, of course, all the nukes would not be able to fire because you got an EMP that took out all the. They're probably secured themselves deep in the ground so that those electronics won't fail, and then they'll just fire off the nukes, and the rest of the world dies too.
Yeah, so exactly.
The EMP. An EMP is no reason not to invest in the new form of money. And I think the EMP fear is people who really don't have any other answer.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no, in an EMP world, there's no gold and silver are useless. I mean, they won't even be carried around. First of all, only a few people own physical gold and silver. It's not like it's internally known that gold and silver are money anymore. That has been ripped out of the consciousness of humanity for decades.
Totally. Hey, so looking at the Chinese attempt to make the yuan convertible supposedly into gold, what are you making of it?
I think there'll be a lot of that stuff. If it's convertible, as in you own one yuan and you can convert it into gold, I think everybody who owned a yuan would convert it into gold right away, and that game would be over instantly.
That would be the end of the yuan.
Exactly. And all the gold would be sucked out of China.
Yeah, because bad money squeezes out good. And
I mean, they could do a backing where no one can touch it, but that's another thing. Then you just got to believe that it's worth something. It's like in the U.S., if we ever tried to back the U.S. dollar with what's in Fort Knox, you have faith and credit. It's faith in your government that gold is there. And, would anybody believe it? Nobody even knows about gold anymore. Nobody cares about gold anymore. So it's these people who have screwed up our system so badly are not going to be the deciders of the new system.
Agreed. I couldn't agree with you more, Bix. I mean, and I think it's going to be really difficult if this collapse really occurs, which we have every reason to believe, a really good possibility, it's likely. If it happens, who is going to trust fiat currencies again?
Yeah. You need a trustless system.
Because I go back to after the Great Depression, when like my grandparents, they were around. My parents were alive then, but they were young. And, people didn't trust banks, Bix.
Oh, yeah.
going to the 60s, the Beverly Hillbillies. Remember, he would always get rattled over Mr. Drysdale's bank. It's solvency, and then he threatened to take all his money out, and then Mr. Drysdale, they'd have to talk him off the ledge of the bank because he was the biggest depositor. I mean, it's kind of cute now to think about it, but that's in the 60s. The 60s, people had an inherent distrust of the banking sector. And where did they get that from? From the Great Depression, when thousands of banks went belly up. It wasn't just their imagination. They weren't being superstitious that if they stepped on a crack, they were going to break their mother's back here, Bix. It was the Great Depression that saw multi-thousands of banks close their doors. And that damage lasted for a long time, the lesson they learned back then was put your money into T-bills. The government isn't going to default. But these lessons of collapse from the banking system, each one is learned differently by a different generation. And yours and mine, we were lucky that nothing happened like that up to now. I think
it has. I think in 2008 that mindless faith was completely destroyed. And the next time the bankers go for a bailout, the answer is going to be no.
Yeah, and I think that's the Fischer sacking.
Definitely. I mean, he's being taken out for many reasons. I mean, if you're talking about evil within the Federal Reserve, Stanley Fischer was the head evil guy within the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of evil guys to go around there, huh?
Well, there is, but there's also good people. I mean, if you look at the Road to Ruta documents, those are good people who are trying to take down the banks. Yeah. This is people within the Federal Reserve taking down the banks. And if you look at the new U.S. dollar, the U.S. $100 bill.
Yeah, I know.
With the gold all over it, and it talks about overthrowing your government right on the front of that bill. It's an amazing sign.
It's got the Declaration of Independence. When in history a people, blah, blah, blah. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
But overthrow their government.
Yeah, throw off their chains.
Above the gold 100 on the bill.
Yeah, well, it's interesting symbolism at the very least, and probably means something far more profound and deep. So what's the next shoe to drop? I'm in the middle of Florida. I believe this hurricane's overhyped, not from the standpoint that they're out to deceive us, from the standpoint that common sense is such a scarce commodity that if they don't scare the hell out of everybody, even if there's only a 10% chance it's going to strike Florida, if they didn't scare the hell out of everybody and it hit and thousands of people get killed, they're holding the bag. This way, no weatherman ever got fired for sounding the alarm too loud on a hurricane, right?
Well, I think this one, we've had the ability technologically to steer hurricanes for, since the 50s. So they could steer it back out to sea if they choose, or they can, if they have a different idea, they can steer it right into Florida. Mm-hmm. I don't think that the chance is 10%. I think it's like 90% now, 90% chance that it's going to hit some part of Florida. I don't know what kind of, is it a Cat 5? Is it not? I don't know.
It's going to be a Cat 3, they're saying now.
Okay.
All of a sudden it's weakening, and their models.
They can do that though. That's the amazing thing. With the technology they've had for like 60, 70 years, they can weaken hurricanes, they can strengthen hurricanes, they can steer hurricanes. And the question is who's got the controls?
Well, it was that base in Alaska, right? The HARP base.
Yeah, HARP.
There.
I mean, and it's not just Alaska. They have quite a few of them, and I heard it's done from satellites now up above space because they can heat up the atmosphere, and that's what causes the intensity of the hurricane. So, I mean, when you think about, oh my God, it's Mother Nature wreaking havoc on the people of the United States. No, I think it's somebody with an agenda. And I find it very interesting that all these natural disasters are happening right when the banks are about to teeter. Mm-hmm. And right when we're about to go to a new monetary system. Why not throw everything at the United States and then claim that that's why the banks and the insurance companies collapsed, is because we had all these catastrophes. The western part of the United States is all on fire right now. It's unbelievable the amount of fires that are going on. Huge disaster. Thousands and thousands of homes are burning up. But, there's other things going on that are bigger news back on the East Coast. But back in Oregon and Washington and Idaho, fires everywhere. It's a huge problem right now.
Yeah. Yep. A big, big problem. And we're just going to have to see where it goes. I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but I think it's leading up to something. It's got that feeling. What about Trump with what's been going on with him lately? You got any thoughts about him?
I think he's working with the good guys on an agenda behind the scenes. And what we see in the media is not what's really happening. The exiting of Stanley Fischer is a great sign that the good guys are done with their bullshit and they're going to take over the reins of the United States. So, yeah, I see nothing but good things in the future. Now's the time that Trump needs to beef up his security, because this is the kind of time that they try to take out presidents. So let's pray for Trump.
Yeah, well, we know that what's his name, Kelly, took control of the White House security. And that might be one reason why Kelly is so close in there, is to protect Trump, Well,
yeah, he's part of the good guys, and the good guys go up to, what's the guy's name? The old Attorney General, Michael Mukasey. Yeah. Michael Mukasey was kind of the head of taking out these bad guys, and his son Mark Mukasey, who took down Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff, that whole thing was a funneling money to the bad guys. That was their funding arm. So when Madoff went down, the bad guys kind of got all pissed off, and that's why we see all this chaos now.
Yeah, there's too much money unaccounted for with Madoff. Like, granted, I think the people who invested only put up like 15 or 20 billion, and the 65 billion came as a result of their phantom returns. But
I heard it was 500 billion, and the second floor of the office, the first floor, or right above or right below the office was their computer rigging trading floor.
Yeah. Well, they didn't trade.
There's
they
so
never
much
traded.
more there.
Yeah. There's something going on there, that's for sure. So anyways, you got to go check out Bix's site, Road to Roota, ROOTA.com. Any books on the horizon here, Bix?
I was writing a book about all the gold in the Grand Canyon that I've been talking about for a long time that they discovered in the early 1900s. And truthfully, I don't think gold's going to be all that important going forward. I think cryptos are going to be a better way to transact business. And I think silver will be way too valuable to use as money. So I kind of put that book on hold for a while.
Disappointed. I would have loved to have read it.
I got a lot of good info on it. It might come out. I've been so busy, and it takes a while to. You really got to focus when you're writing a book.
I know. You have to be all about the book. Anyways, you got a question for Bix? Myself, email us kl@kerrylutz.com, Twitter feed @kerrylutz, and of course, the Facebook page is Financial Survival Network. Bix, we'll talk to you in a little while. Thanks so much for joining us.
All right. Take care, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.